pay yourself first, PYF. If you do that, then you would have all the remaining money left over to travel, to eat pizza, suck on bonbons, get balloons, play video games. It doesn't matter because you've paid yourself first.
What are probably some advices or some codes or whatever it is that really change your perspective of just financial management?
Say that you're talking to a 22, 23, 24, 25-year-old, 26-year-old.
All of them.
That's just out of college.
Yeah.
What would be the singular biggest piece of advice that you would give them to help them out in their journey?
On today's episode, we talk about finance, a topic that you and I need to hear from. We'll be talking about how much money should you actually allocate towards your rent. We're going to talk about the discipline behind budgeting and why budgeting is very important. And so we're also going to hear about one story that completely changed the point of view of a man that we'll be hearing from, who, I won't spoil it. Just sit down, relax, and enjoy. And if you're finding value in this video, like and subscribe. There's a lot of you watching by having a subscribe, like and subscribe, and let's get into it. Could you tell us a little bit about, or can you share any guide on how much should be spent on rent, food, and also any money towards just fun activities? But also, if you don't mind to introduce yourself, because me and Qynton, we know you, but probably people listening do not know you.
Yes, my name is Lyndon Davis. I am a Senior Vice President Investments at Raymond James. I've been in the financial services industry for just under 19 years. And prior to that, I was an engineer, did that for about a little bit more than 12 years before making the switch over to doing this kind of work. And I have to say that it is the most rewarding thing outside of raising children. It is the most rewarding work that I think I have done, and that is helping people get to their goals. And I do that by using various financial tools, services, products, but most importantly by listening to my clients and then applying the tools, the services, and the products to their situation so that they can meet their goals. So in a nutshell, that's who I am. Clearly there's more to the story, but as far as this podcast is concerned, I think that will suffice. Now to your question, how much should I set aside for housing? Well, how big is your house? Are you living in a Chilla Villa mansion by the ocean and it got like 100 servants and pool boys? And I mean, if you have all of that, it's going to take a lot of money. But I'm assuming that you're talking about young professionals. Well, the statistics show that typically in the USA, about 30% of one's income is dedicated toward housing. So if you want to be right down the middle, if you want to be in line with what's happening in the US, then around 30% or so should be allocated to housing. Now, as far as the other things, hanging out or for that car or for travel and so forth, I don't necessarily drive people to look at their finances from that perspective. I drive people to pivot. Otherwise, it will go poof, piff. Otherwise, it'll go poof. What do I mean by piff? Pay yourself first. Pay yourself first, PYF. If you do that, then you would have all the remaining money left over to travel, to eat pizza, suck on bonbons, get balloons, play video games. It doesn't matter because you've paid yourself first, and now all the other bills can be taken care of. So if you want to be down the middle, 30% or so for housing. But if you really want to get smart, you pay yourself first, and then you allocate to those other things in your life.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so how much percentage then should you allocate towards paying yourself? And then also, what does it, how can I know that I'm living beyond my means, right? Because I think that's very important. You have to live within your means, but how do I know that, okay, I'm going outside of what I can actually afford?
I will start with the second question first, and that is how do I know if I'm living beyond my means, and then get to what percentage should I allocate toward paying myself first. The one way, unquestionably, we all know that we're living beyond our means is if we're going into debt. It is that simple. If there is more month left at the end of the money, you are living way beyond your means. If you find yourself dipping into the credit card in order to make ends meet, you are living beyond your means. If you're going into debt, if you are running out of money before the obligations are satisfied, it's that simple, guys. You're living beyond your means. So now, how much should I set aside to take care of paying myself first? Well, I would say start small. Unless you actually have done a spending analysis is where you look at all your spending that you've done for about a couple of months, and then you categorize it: food, travel, rent, lights, gas, entertainment, student loans, whatever it might be. You categorize everything that you've done for about 2 months, and then you take an average of those 2 months. And that will give you a good idea of what you do month in and month out. And from there, you come to understand, well, how much am I really spending toward travel? How much am I really spending toward food? And I don't mean food for the home, although that's in there too. But I'm talking like eating out at restaurants or having Grubhub deliver it, those kind of things. How much am I really spending there? And once you've gotten that understanding, you can now make adjustments. Wow, I really don't have to eat out as much. So what I was using for eating out, I'm going to use that to pay myself first. So that would be the best way to go about it. But let's just say that you want to get started. Start small. Seriously. Start with maybe 1% of your income. If you make $1,000, put away 10 bucks. Put away 10 bucks. And if you can survive and do everything by putting away 10, then you challenge yourself to do 20 and then 30 and then 40. But I would say get to that spending analysis so that you can know where your money is going and then make adjustments a little bit more for going home to visit mom. Who doesn't want to go home to visit mom? And a little bit less to playing video games.
Yeah, I think that that's a very good concept. But as you may know, right, it's tough out here in these streets. The economy, it's kind of crazy. Just coming out of college, like it's tough to find like a job. So would you say that budgeting is even worth it if you're making, say, let's say about $2,000 a month? Is
Mm-hmm.
budgeting even worth it for something like that?
Yeah. So budgeting is always going to be worth it. A budget, a lot of people, especially those who are now finding themselves in the workforce or trying to break into the workforce, they find it to be near an impossible task. It feels as if I'm being constricted. I barely have enough to pay my rent. I mean, I'm eating ramen noodles every month. How are you expecting me now to say I'm going to budget? Well, a budget is where you tell your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. When
Mhm.
you budget, you tell your money, go pay for my gas for the month, go pay
Yeah.
for my rent for the month. You are telling, before you spent the dollar, you're telling your money where it's got to go, what job it has to do. And it's all the more important if you haven't fully broken into the workforce. If you're still out there hustling the streets, it's all the more important to give that dollar a job so that it's not wasted either by spending on things you don't need or sitting idly around waiting for taxes and inflation to eat it up. So, yes, a budget is still important. In this book, Air Supply: How to Financially Breathe Easier, the comparison is made between pure oxygen to the lungs and a budget to your finances. The way oxygen actually stimulates life and growth in the body, that's what a budget does for your finances. And whether you're rich or poor, that budget will be that absolute air supply to continue to pump you up to higher and higher levels of wealth.
Mm. Yeah, that book, Air Supply, it's definitely an amazing book. I would definitely recommend that. Now, you did talk about like if you're making like $1,000, pay yourself first, get $10, challenge yourself to save 20 and then continue to go up. How can I do that if I feel like there's really nothing left after paying for the bills?
So reality eventually sets in. So at 5'5" and you're in the sixth grade, you have an entire future ahead of you with the solid knowledge I am going to the NBA.
For sure.
But at your third year of college and you're still 5'5", reality
Dang.
has to set in.
Didn't even grow 1 inch? Not even 1 inch?
Not even 1 inch.
Oh no.
Reality sets in. That is not going to happen. So then you've got to make yourself another plan. Maybe you could do football. Maybe you could run track. But dude, you are not going to the NBA. Muggsy Bogues was the first and only. It is not going to happen again.
I was about to say, I know a few guys. I know a few guys, but sorry, go ahead.
So if you're at 1,000 a month and it's just not cutting it, reality should set in that I need more income. I need a plan B. So then you'd actually have to sacrifice something. That something might be hanging out with the fellas. It might be time spent with that special lady friend or guy friend for those of you women who are listening. It might mean having to sacrifice that so that you can derive more income, because the reality is the income is not meeting the obligations. And that's a debt situation. We got to find our way out of that debt situation. In this case, you got to get more income.
That's actually very interesting that you mentioning that, right? Getting more income. But let's say the person does not want to get more income. What's probably the first thing that they should cut from their budget or their expenses?
Discretionary expenditures. So in the world of budgeting, I mean, there are many different categories that you can separate. But the two largest categories of budgeting are required or non-discretionary expenses, and then optional or discretionary expenses. And discretionary means exactly that. I have discretion as to whether or not I have that thing or not. So something like, I'm just going to pick on the guys again, video games. Unless that is your job, you're a video game designer and you've got to test out video games in order to design things and release them out to the video gaming world and so forth. Most of us see video games as something that we like to do, but we don't have to do. So if you're spending money on video games, that's got to go. Getting Uber Eats delivered to the home, again, for that same $10, you could buy yourself a good 2 weeks worth of ramen noodles. Do I have a witness? So that
yes,
is
you
what
do.
I would look at. That is what I look at when I say discretionary expenses. Whatever it is in that discretionary category, that has to be the first to go before you start looking at, okay, these mandatory things like, I mean, seriously, it's a thing and it has been done before. In the East Coast or in the Midwest where I am, turning the heat down to where it only comes on once a day. I need heat. And that's a mandatory, that's a non-discretionary thing. But I would soon deal with the discretionary stuff before I start thinking about turning that thermostat down to 57 and 56. Pipes won't freeze. I certainly will, but the pipes won't freeze. But my bills will get lower if I did that. Not varying my food choices, like I'm getting a bunch of starches and a bunch of vegetables. I'm not doing a whole lot with protein. Why? Because bread, even in this high inflationary environment, bread still is relatively inexpensive and goes a long way. And those are the kind of things that I would have to start looking at if I got to the discretionary and still needed to get somewhere but couldn't get any further income.
Right. And so what you mentioned truly requires discipline, right? You have to be disciplined into understanding what's important and what's not important, right? But at the same time, that same discipline is very much needed in budgeting, right? Telling your money here, the money needs to go here and there. But then I think one of the biggest things that I find myself, right, after having a budget is to stay disciplined within the budget. And so what are some tricks or tools that you can recommend on how to stay disciplined after setting up a budget?
That is a beautiful, beautiful concept. Discipline. Folks, here it is. And let it stick in your memory. If discipline is the entree of the meal ticket to prosperity, then accountability is the secret sauce. If discipline is the entree of the meal ticket to prosperity, and I don't mean living large, living rich, I mean having enough for yourself and a little bit left over for someone else. That's prospering. Having enough for yourself and a little left over for someone else. If all you have is enough for yourself, you're not prospering. You're surviving. You're just getting by. But if you have enough for yourself and then you have a little left over to help someone else or to do something else with, now you're prospering. And for some people, prosperity could be this much. For others, it could be that much. But either way, you're still in a prosperous situation. And discipline is that meal ticket toward that prosperity. And the thing that makes discipline solid is accountability. If you don't have the accountability within yourself, I can't get up to go to the gym to lose this belly fat and whatnot. Well, what do? You hire someone who's going to make you accountable for getting up and get to that gym. And what is in an accountability partner if you don't have that self accountability? That person must be someone you respect. None of us, none of us is going to listen to our little brother. Unless, of course, our little brother's bigger than us and can actually beat us down. But none of us listen to our little brother. We don't respect our little brother. You has to be somebody that you respect. And the second criteria, at a minimum, has to be someone that you'd hate to disappoint. Think about you bringing home that floozy from the bar to say that I'm going to show that to your mother who you know is going to be ticked off. You don't want to let mom down, so you don't bring her home. You'd be like, oh, she's working. She's got studies. You do everything you can to not disappoint mom. To me, the best thing to do is get the right girl. But let's just say you didn't. You will never put yourself in that position. Same thing with accountability, fellas. Someone who you respect and someone who you'd hate to disappoint. And with that accountability now, it now gives teeth to that discipline. So your question about what tricks and so forth can you employ in order to get that discipline? Well, again, that suggests that you don't have it within you. And if you don't, sure, you can do tricks, but I promise you, tricks will actually get tired and old and be easy to just cast away. You need to get yourself an accountability partner.
Yeah, I feel like what you said right there is really profound. Along with the discipline, though, it can be very easy in today's culture, right? Where you're always getting opportunities to subscribe to different services, and you can subscribe to this thing, you can subscribe to that thing. They may not necessarily seem like that much, but it tends to add up. So would you say that there is first of all, would you say that there is a subscription services that are actually worth the money? Like, what subscriptions are actually worth the money? And is there a good system for keeping track and making sure that you're not paying subscriptions that you don't necessarily need?
So, are there subscription services that are worth the money? Yes. Is there a way to keep track of those subscriptions that you signed up for so that you're not wasting money? Also, yes. I'll answer the second one first. We're going back to the budget. If you're keeping a budget, you know where you're telling the money where to go. You're not wondering where it went. So when you budget, you know what subscription services that you're tied into. And you can then decide if I absolutely still need X, Y, or Z. So that's how you can keep track. But there are other apps. Now, by using those apps, you have to understand now, when you use apps to keep track of those subscription services or any services, they're collecting data on you. And you know what they're going to do with that data? Yeah, they're going to sell you another subscription service. So you want to be careful about using those apps. They're going to use your data to get you to buy something else. They're not giving it to you for free. They got to get theirs somehow, right? So there are apps. I think Rocket Money is one of those that actually advertises that they will find your subscriptions and they'll automatically delete the ones that you do not want as long as you tell them. So budget number one, that's where I go first. You can look for different apps that actually look for that for you. Now, the other question that she has is, are there subscription services that are worth having? Yes, yes, absolutely yes. If, for instance, you are a person who has deep faith and you actually don't have the mental ability to look up Bible texts and so forth, but you want to keep that connection. Yes, when everybody else, your accountability partner, your pastor, your bishop, whomever it might be, when they're asleep and they're doing whatever it is that they need to do, if you have a subscription service that feeds you biblical affirmations, that gives you that psalm that gets you out of the doldrums or gives you encouragement to fight on for another day, that's a subscription service that you need to keep. Equally true if you're in the healthcare field or the athletics field, and there's a subscription service that keeps you abreast of things that are going on, because not all of us can read the Wall Street Journal, right? Not all of us can read all the way through Men's Health every month that it comes out. It would be good for something to actually give us the things that's specific to that thing that we're dealing with. That would be worth it to you. But to have a subscription service that tells you how the stars are going to align tomorrow and who's going to win the lotto next week and how much this crypto stock is going to go up by 5,000%, really? Yeah, I would say for
I mean,
those,
no, I get it.
I would say let them go. Just let them
Like, you
go.
don't you don't want to know who's gonna win the lottery? Like, you
Oh,
don't think
yeah,
that that's
if
a good
it's me,
financial
I want to
purchase,
know
or
that. If it's me. But outside of that, no. No.
um no, absolutely. Now you did make the statement that you should put your subscriptions in the budget. Do you recommend having a separate section of just subscriptions, or integrating the subscriptions into the other categories that you have within the budget?
So, what Sam asked earlier about discipline is another area where it can be applied. In this particular area is what I should say. And that is, if you are disciplined, seriously, you're disciplined about making sure money goes exactly where it needs to and that things are not being spent wastefully, then you can all compile it into one area. That's not a problem because you know those subscriptions exist and you know how much it is for them. But if you're not so disciplined, then it behooves you to list out each subscription and how much clearly that you'd like to pay to each one. And that way you can determine, well, you know what? I've already figured out all the different ways there are to play tic tac toe. I have derived every conceivable way of spelling Bob. I don't think I need that subscription to tell me the third or the fourth way to spell Bob. I can get rid of that. So I would say that's how you go about. If you have the discipline, you can lump it. If not, itemize it.
Mm.
Right. And so you did mention that you have spent so many years in the financial industry. And so what are probably some advices or some codes or whatever it is that really change your perspective of just financial management?
More than anything else, and this is a saying that comes out of politics, more than anything else, a crisis. Someone once said, never let a good crisis go to waste. In crisis, politicians find that they can do things that they never could accomplish under normal circumstances. And the exact same thing applies in a crisis when the markets are going nuts, when nobody seems to know what to do. That's a crisis. The 2008 2009 was the last real financial crisis that we experienced here in the United States. And it really exposed a lot of people who I would call charlatans and fakers who prided themselves on being financial advisors. And all they really were money transactioners. They just took your money, transacted in the market, and then they went off to play golf, as opposed to truly managing that person's wealth or giving them solid financial advice. It was during crisis, Sam, where I became more aware not only of financial management, but my own situation. And if you permit me, I'm going to go into that here for a couple of seconds. So, even though I was in the industry and I'm advising clients on their money. And truly, I'm doing a good job. I'm advising them on all their money. The sad thing is, I was not taking that advice for myself. I found myself with over $600,000 worth of debt. This is during the financial crisis now. And I found myself with my income cut by over 70%. I had two kids, I still do, by the way, and a wife at the time. Now, think about that scenario: income down by 70%, a wife, two children, and over $600,000 worth of debt. What is a guy going to do? That crisis forced me to become, as I said earlier, deal with reality. You're not going to the NBA if you're a junior in college and 5'5". Yeah, it forced me to deal with reality. I needed to get serious about money management. And it was during that time that I started taking the advice that I was doling out. And one of the first things that me and my wife did is that we stopped debt. We discontinued all debt. And we decided we are now going to live within our means. So I'm not going to go further into that, but I say that only to say that a crisis made me awake to the financial situation that I was in and my need to actually take steps. And now to your question, yes, a crisis is what has led me to even advise my clients more. One of the things that the financial crisis of 2008, 2009 demonstrated was if you were patient and you were disciplined, you made money. What? People lost 40, 50% in the market. What do you mean if you were patient and you were disciplined, you made money? Seriously, if you just closed your eyes, went off, took a 1 year vacation, and came back, and I mean did nothing but that, you would have found that that 40 and 50% loss that you suffered was now only a 10, 15% loss. And by 2010, you made every penny back. You were right back to where you were after 2 years. By 2013, you doubled your money. If you did nothing, you doubled your money. So financial crisis brings out either the worst in people, they panic and they do dumb things, or they bring out the best in people. They're able to be patient and disciplined and take advantage of that crisis. Amazon, I don't remember what the price was, but let's just say Amazon was selling for $60 a share before the crisis, and now it's selling for $30 a share. That's when you should say to yourself, it's on sale. I'm going to get more. And if you did, by 2013, it was $120. So if you bought it at 30, you got 4 times. But if you did nothing, you had it at 60, it dropped down to 30, and you did nothing, by 2013, it was 120. And guys, again, that's just an example. It's not real. It's just a hypothetical to express what discipline and patience does during a crisis.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So with that, if you had to say that you're talking to a 22, 23, 24, 25-year-old, 26-year-old
All of them.
that's
Why
just out of
not?
college.
Talking to all of
Yeah. Just out of college, starting out their career and trying to find their way in the world, what would be the singular biggest piece of advice that you would give them to help them out in their journey?
I'm a man of faith. I believe that everything that we have is given to us by God. And I do mean given. Yes, we do have to work for things and whatnot, but if God did not set it off, if He did not start it off, we would have absolutely nothing. Everything that we have comes from and belongs to God. The single biggest thing that I could tell someone, whether they're religious or not, whether they're Christian or not, is don't forget their Creator. You can be an atheist and be like, I don't believe in a God and so forth. Well, you know what? Eventually, everything that you have is going to go somewhere. And I promise you, you ain't taking it with you and whatnot. And if indeed you are going to do something meaningful, if you're going to do something appreciable, then it would make sense to think about what happens to me after I'm done doing all of this. And as Stephen Covey in his book said, you begin with the end in mind. So when I'm beginning my career as a 22, 23, 24, 25, even 26-year-old, when I'm doing that, I'm at the beginning. I should look toward the end. As a man of faith, I say, look to God because He is the beginning and the end. If you're an atheist, you still want to think about the end because eventually something is going to happen with all the stuff that you've amassed. And then let things work, not only for your good, but for the good of someone else. I've been known to say this. What do you call it when the body takes in but never lets anything out? What do you call that? Yeah, constipation. That is
Mm,
constipation. And if you've ever been constipated before, it is not a pretty event. It is not a lovely thing. Same
not
thing
at
with your
all.
finances. If you're always taking in, but you're never giving out, you are financially constipated. And you might tell yourself you feel good. I've got all these riches. I've got all these cars, this gold, whatever it might be. But you will feel rotten because you're not giving out. So begin with the end in mind, and all through that, think about how you can give to help someone else. I promise you, one of the best feelings you will ever experience on the planet is giving to the assistance, to the benefit of someone else.
Mm, it's a great place to leave it. That's a great place to leave it. Well, yeah, I truly appreciate all the information that you were able to just bless us with today. Like it was, I know, I know for me, and I know for Sam as well. This was a wealth of information that very useful for where we're going, and for the rest of the one percenters. Hopefully, you guys got some great morsels of information today. If you have not liked the video yet, why have you not liked the video yet? We're 30 minutes into the video. Do me a favor and like the video, and we shall catch you guys soon.